they were called gods, but in the oldest records on Earth, they weren't described as spirits or illusions. They were builders, rulers, and creators who descended from the sky. And today, most people know them by one name, the Anunnaki. In this episode, we'll uncover 5 ancient artifacts that researchers and theorists believe connect directly to these gods, or to something beyond our understanding. In 1849, on the banks of the Tigris River in modern-day Iraq, an English archaeologist named Austin Henry Layard was leading an excavation. His team was digging through the ruins of ancient Nineveh, once the greatest city of the Assyrian Empire. Among shattered bricks and clay debris, they found something different. Hundreds of cuneiform tablets, perfectly preserved under layers of earth and stone. Among these was a set of tablets that would become known as the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic. At first glance, they seemed like religious hymns or myths, but as scholars began to translate the lines pressed into clay over 3,500 years ago, a story emerged that was darker, colder, and more deliberate than anyone expected. In the ancient city of Babylon, over 3,500 years ago, scribes pressed their reed stylus into wet clay, line by line, copying words they believed came from the gods themselves. When the tablets dried, they were stored in temple libraries, hidden away and safe from the desert winds. So the only thing different about this from other tablets was that these weren't myths written for children, or stories meant to entertain. The Enuma Elish was the creation epic, a record of how everything began. It tells of Tiamat, the chaotic primordial ocean, the Marduk, the storm god who defeated her. But within its lines are hidden details that would later fuel the Anunnaki theory. When these tablets were first translated in the late 1800s, you could say the writings they found was pretty shocking to scholars. According to the text, gods gathered to create humans, not as an act of love or guidance, but to serve, to work. Humans were built to take on the labor of the gods, merely so they could rest. Now, this wasn't a unique idea in Mesopotamia. The same concept appears in other tablets across Sumer and Akkad. For some researchers today, these tablets aren't just mythology, they're clues, fragments of an older story about where we came from and who might have been here before us. But clay tablets weren't the only place these ancient people recorded their gods. In royal palaces to the north, entire walls were carved with towering figures that some believe showed the Anunnaki themselves. In the mid-1800s, European archaeologists were digging through the ruins of ancient Assyrian cities in northern Iraq. At the site of Nimrod, a city once called Kalhu, they uncovered the remains of a massive palace belonging to King Ashurnasirpal II. As they brushed away centuries of sand and stone, they began to see shapes emerging from the wall, giant carved figures, each over 9 feet tall, frozen in time. What they discovered were the Assyrian winged Genie reliefs, towering stone carvings depicting human-like figures with wings, bearded faces, elaborate robes, and horn helmets. Some even held small buckets. Others clutched pine cones pressed against the air in front of them. Their wings were feathered like eagles, their eyes wide and unblinking. To the Assyrians, these figures were protective spirits, guarding the king and his palace from evil forces. They were called Apkallu, sages or demigods said to have descended from the heavens to teach humans wisdom, writing, agriculture, and the secrets of civilization itself. But for some researchers today, these reliefs aren't just protective spirits carved into palace walls. They see something different. The horn helmets are interpreted as advanced headgear. The pine cone, held out, is seen as a technological device, maybe for genetic manipulation, while the bucket is imagined as a container of sacred or scientific tools. Standing before them, you can almost imagine what the ancient Assyrians felt. Small, watched, and under the gaze of beings far more powerful than themselves. So while scholars call them spirits and priests, others say they were gods or visitors. And as powerful as these carvings look, the next artifact isn't carved from stone at all. It's a simple cylinder, pressed with words that claims humans didn't just worship the gods. They built temples because the gods commanded it. In 1877, French archaeologists were excavating the ruins of an ancient city in southern Iraq called Lagash. As they dug through layers of collapsed mud-brick temples and shattered pottery, they uncovered two massive clay cylinders, each over half a meter tall, covered in dense cuneiform writing from top to bottom. These artifacts became known as the Gudea Cylinders. The inscriptions date back over 4,000 years, commissioned by Gudea, the ruler of Lagash. They tell the story of how he built a temple for Ningirsu, the city's chief god. But Gudea didn't just wake up one day and decide to build. According to the cylinders, Ningirsu came to him in a dream and gave him exact instructions: the temple's measurements, its layout, the offerings needed, and even specific bricks to use. For scholars, these texts are an incredible record of ancient devotion and temple construction. But for others, there's something else entirely. To them, these lines describe an encounter with a being who wasn't just a god in the mythological sense, but something far more real, a physical entity giving architectural blueprints to humans, commanding them to build massive structures in their honor. It's almost like the Enuma Elish tablets all over again. Humans created to serve, then given orders with no question of refusal. The only difference here is that it wasn't about being born for labor. It was about being told exactly how to build, brick by brick, for those who claim the skies as their home. But as impressive as these inscriptions are, the next artifact isn't about commands written in clay. It's about a structure that rose into the sky, so massive, it still stands thousands of years later, built for gods who are said to descend from the heavens themselves. In the 1920s, British archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley was leading excavations near a small village in southern Iraq called Tel El Mukayyar. As his team brushed away centuries of sand and debris, massive brick walls began to rise from the earth, revealing a structure so vast it dominated the flat desert landscape. What they uncovered was the Ziggurat of Ur. It was built over 4,000 years ago and was a giant step pyramid once towering over the ancient city of Ur, the Sumerian capital and birthplace of Abraham, according to some traditions. Its foundations alone stretches over 200 feet on each side, with three massive terraces stacked upon each other, reaching nearly 100 feet into the sky. To the Sumerians, this ziggurat wasn't just a temple, it was a bridge between Earth and the heavens, dedicated to Nana, the moon god, one of the Anunnaki. Only priests and kings could ascend the stairways, climbing closer to the gods with every step. Today, its bricks are weathered and its upper levels long collapsed, but standing at its base, you can still feel its purpose: to bring humans closer to those who descended from the sky. For some researchers, structures like these weren't just symbols of devotion. They were landing platforms, built for beings who needed a place to descend and a throne to rule from. And while temples like this were constructed to honor the gods, the final artifact isn't about worship at all. It's about time, in the list of kings who ruled for so long that their reigns break the limits of human history itself. In the early 1900s, German archaeologists excavating the ruins of Larsa in southern Iraq uncovered a small, unassuming clay tablet. Its surface was covered in dense cuneiform script, tightly packed lines pressed into the clay over 4,000 years ago. So, alright, cool. Another tablet with Sumerian writing. But when scholars began to translate its lines, they realized it was something entirely different. This was the Sumerian King List, a record of rulers stretching back into the deepest shadows of prehistory. It lists city after city, dynasty after dynasty, but what made it so extraordinary was the descriptions of the earliest kings. So according to the tablet, they were rulers who reigned for tens of thousands of years. One king, Alulim of Eridu, was said to have ruled for 28,800 years, another for 36,000. And it didn't stop there. The list recorded 8 kings, ruling for a combined total of over 240,000 years. before a great flood swept them away. To historians, the King List is a blend of myth, legend, and fragmentary historical memory. But for others, it's something far more literal. They see it as a record of the Anunnaki themselves, god kings who descended to rule humanity directly, living far longer than any mortal could. When you read these lines today, you can almost feel their weight, a quiet echo from a time when gods and kings were one and the same. These are just fragments of what the Anunnaki left behind: stone carvings, clay tablets, and towers reaching for the sky. Whether they were gods, aliens, or something else entirely, their story isn't over, because we're still uncovering it, piece by piece. If you want more mysteries like this, subscribe. There's plenty more discoveries waiting to be uncovered.